The second team in the 2016 finals of the Rice Business Plan competition. Please help me welcome TriFusion Devices from Texas A&M University.
It's okay, Brad. Prosthetics technology is stuck in the 90s, too. Good afternoon. Many of you may have wondered how much it costs an amputee to purchase a prosthetic device that he or she may need in order to get up and walk again. Barb Zucker's a friend of mine. I've known Barb for a long time. She owns a diner in the mountains of Colorado where I grew up. She works hard every day on her feet, cooking, delivering food. Barb lost part of her left leg in an auto accident 28 years ago. And it surprised me to learn that Barb has spent over $235,000 out of her own pocket just to buy devices in that time, just for device-related costs in that time. We're not just here today to talk about next-generation nanotechnology and 3D printing. We're here because people like Barb are overdue to regain their financial freedom. Because Barb's just like millions of other Americans who've lost a limb for a variety of reasons. And whether they have to bear those costs themselves, or whether society does through a public channel like the VA, the costs are too burdensome because the technology is stuck in the 90s. The average cost for a prosthetic leg in the United States is $30,000. If you'd like to run, expect to pay $100,000. Insurance reimbursements are often limited at $3,000 of those dollars, and what happens is that forces the users to underspecify their device, placing a whopping financial burden directly on the shoulder of the amputee. These devices are built by hand. They require 4 to 8 weeks between design, fabrication, and fitment. Since they're mechanical in nature, they wear out. This device is 2 years old. The average replacement rate in the United States is 3 to 5 years. That forces the wearer to go through that painful procurement process all over again. So learning this, we asked ourselves, wouldn't it be incredible if we could supply custom, durable prosthetic devices at prices the user could manage to buy the device they need to lead the life they want to lead? Because 3D printing is a perfect technology for prosthetic devices. They're custom fit, one-off devices. And with our patent-pending material science technology, we've solved the strength problem in the Z, the Y, and the X direction, making load-bearing prosthetics a reality. And we can supply devices at prices that give users their financial freedom back. TriFusion Devices designs, fabricates, and supplies finished 3D printed devices to the prosthetics community. The prosthetist is our customer. The end user is, of course, the amputee. The end user visits the prosthetist scans the geometry and supplies the geometry to TriFusion. TriFusion prints the device is fitted to the amputee, and then we get paid. This is how our business works. Prosthetics and orthotics is our first market. We will take lessons learned here, and as you will see, we will apply them to other vertical industries in the wearables markets. My name is Blake Teipel. I'm a PhD candidate in material science and engineering at Texas A&M.
My name is Britton Eastburn. I'm a medical student as well as an MBA candidate at Texas A&M.
And my name is Brandon Sweeney. I'm also a PhD candidate in material science and engineering at Texas A&M University. Now, you may know the idea to use 3D printing for prosthetic devices isn't new. The problem has always been these devices are too fragile to be used in load-bearing applications. The reason is that 3D printed components are built up in layers in the Z direction. And when used in everyday life, they crack and they pull apart like a deck of cards. We have a patent-pending technology that solves this problem. We take a standard 3D printer filament and we apply a thin conductive coating containing carbon nanotubes. When printed, this coating remains at the interface of the printed part, and then we apply a microwave heat treatment that heats that layer up, welding the layers together and making it strong and durable. This is a thermal video of our process in action. We developed a custom microwave source to heat our prosthetic shin. You can see this heating happening in real time. And it's this process that enables the strength and durability that all other 3D printing technologies lack today. We've already doubled the strength and increased the toughness 6 times over that of our closest competitors. And you may be wondering, this is for 3D printing, how do we compare to current technologies? Well, we've done extensive finite element analysis that shows that our materials and processes are better than current materials that they're using today to make these devices. Other competitors in this space for 3D printing, they have some other next generation technologies, but we have an advantage over them because we've solved the Z-strength issue and we can print in multiple materials. We filed a patent for this technology 2 years ago to protect it. It's currently searchable as a patent cooperation treaty. And And this patent has 3 independent claims. One is the materials that go into the coating. The second is the microwaving process to fuse the part together. And the third is the printer that incorporates both the microwave and the 3D printing technology itself. We have a broad license to this technology, and we can use this for biomedical devices, including orthotics and prosthetics. And we can also use this to print sporting protective equipment, like football helmets. We can print devices that will protect and serve our soldiers in the military. These are all human interacting 3D printed parts. And as the primary inventor of this technology, I'm passionate about getting these devices into the marketplace now. So I'm going to show you exactly how we made our prototype. We start with a 3D scan of a patient's limb geometry. My wife graciously donated her leg of science for this scan. And although she isn't an amputee, it demonstrates our process perfectly. This is a series of cell phone images that were snapped and then converted into a 3D model of her leg. This is then converted into a mesh file that we can adapt for areas of hard and soft tissue. The prosthetist can do this. And also, we have the ability to print flexible and hard materials, and those flexible materials that can be added into areas of the device for more comfort to the patient. This has never been done before for this technology. We'll receive that fitment data from the prosthetist, and that'll be converted into a final geometry with a cloud-connected software platform, so it's highly automated. And here's the exciting part. We can go from that final design to the finished device overnight instead of 4 to 8 weeks, vastly reducing the amount of labor that goes into the traditional plaster casting process, thermoforming to get the test bit socket, and the fabric layout for the final device. We do this so much faster than our competitors. The final device is ergonomic and elegant.
There's a fundamental underlying truth here that demands emphasis. In the 35 years since the first patent was filed for 3D printing, the largest firms in the industry have spent billions of dollars trying to solve the problem and cross the final barrier to widespread commercial adoption: strength. Backed by funding from the DoD and the National Science Foundation, TriFusion has finally come up with a solution. So with this groundbreaking technology in hand, a lot of you are probably still wondering, why prosthetics? With the world of opportunity in front of us, we decided to focus first on 2 main objectives. 1, do the most good for as many people as possible. Number 2, generate the highest margins we can, as fast as we can, for our investors upon entry. The prosthetics market accomplishes both. It is the perfect platform to introduce our new technology to the world, setting the stage for a true third industrial revolution. What's more, we have the experience to get us there. My good friend Blake is our CEO with a background in business and product development, working for industry leaders such as Caterpillar, John Deere, and NASA. Brandon is our CTO and the primary inventor of our technology, and has previously worked for the Army Research Labs developing nanotechnology and 3D printing capabilities for robotic vehicles. As for myself, I'm a medical student at Texas A&M, where I'll also finish my MBA in just a couple of weeks, and my background relates specifically to healthcare policy and insurance. Still, we recognize we can't do this on our own. So we've recruited an advisory board of medical, military, and business professionals with decades of experience, including renowned orthopedic surgeons, materials experts, and clinical directors. We will routinely consult with our board to identify and fill the needs of our personnel as we expand to capacity. At TriFusion, we have the right idea, we have the right team to launch, and with the right investors, we can take the fastest path to profitability through the prosthetics market. With nearly 600,000 new devices sold in the U.S. each year, we see almost $7 billion in sales opportunity, and this figure is growing by more than 10% every year. What's more, it is extremely fragmented with thousands of providers, the largest of which commands less than 15% of the market. And as we discussed, it is still dominated by outdated legacy technologies that still depend primarily on plaster casting. This is less efficient than making pottery. And unlike most health professions, it is not regulated by one central governing board or national standard, making prosthetics the ideal launchpad for explosive growth and rapid technology validation. Prosthetists are under increasing pressure to see more patients every day while simultaneously decreasing costs and increasing quality. That's really hard to do. By outsourcing their production to TriFusion, they can achieve the trifecta: drastically reduce costs, more face time with more patients every day, and a higher reimbursement because our prosthetics qualify for billing as ultralight devices. After all, you wouldn't expect a dentist to make his own dentures, and you wouldn't expect a surgeon to make his own sutures. So why do we expect prosthetists, it's a fun word, I know, to make their own prosthetics? So how do we do it? Over the last year, we've teamed up with 5 different clinics, 2 VAs in Houston and Dallas, 2 private clinics in Bryan and San Antonio, as well as the Baylor College of Medicine right next door, to introduce our devices to the market and validate our technology. Over the next year, we will supply these clinics with 50 to 60 of our devices as we progress through the initial IRB trial phase. During the same period, we intend to double our staff in order to begin training new engineers while also boosting our sales efforts. I should also note that our devices are Class 1 medical devices eligible for 510K exemption. Because 3D printing eliminates the vast majority of costs associated with labor and overhead and everything else in your standard clinic, we can produce devices at less than a quarter of today's standard. And with price levels averaging well beyond the $7,000 to $8,000 range we have in mind, we have the flexibility in pricing that affords both rapid returns for investors while also slashing costs for the end user, the patient. Anticipating a 1% market capture by year 5 with an annual sales volume of 6,000 units, we see revenues in excess of $40 million. But that's 5 years from now. How do we go from here to there? With year-over-year sales growth exceeding 300%, we see an initial payback period of less than 3 years, at which point our minimal debt balance will allow us to inject cash straight into sales and marketing, continued research and development, and of course, investors' pockets.
We need $920,000 in order to get the first 50 devices fit onto patients. We've already brought about $500,000 to the table, notably funded R&D from the National Science Foundation and the DoD. This de-risks any future investment. Today, we'd like to get $400,000 or more. We really need $1.8 million to get cash flow positive. We've already secured a letter of intent from the Baylor College of Medicine to shepherd our technology through the institutional review board process. And on the other end of the value chain, we've partnered with a materials and machines company to make our custom materials to our specifications. This large format 3D printer incorporates a microwave inside and can print 10 sockets at the same time. This is our V2 prototype socket. This one right here is structural. The first prototype was a design prototype, non-structural. This one's structural. When we put it on Jim, Jim's interacted with prosthetic devices his entire life. He's a graduate of Baylor's program. He's now a prosthetist himself. Jim said, I cannot feel a difference between the prosthetic socket that you 3D printed and one that I make with my own hands using the old technology. Jim's customer 1. Again, we have 50 units. With the 900,000, we'd like to close the gap today with 400,000 if possible. 1.8 million gets us to cash flow positive. That's 300 units. We're engaged in prototyping right now. Prototyping meaning structural trials. We'll invest that money in people, equipment, and materials to get the first 50 units. In order to get the next 300 units, we'll engage in pilot builds and much broader customer trials. Expanding the team, engaging in legal and accounting practices, of course, and funneling our documentation through the institutional review board process. We see revenue streams from out-licensing. If someone comes to us and says, hey, I'd like to license your device for this wearables space, we have the ability to do that. We're also positioned for acquisition both to large companies in the 3D printing space and the biomedical device space. In addition, we plan to grow our markets. We'd like to do something like Save Football, which sounds a little interesting, but if we can print helmet inserts with crushable crumple zones, just like today's cars have, then CTE traumas start to go away, and football becomes a much more streamlined process. We'd like to issue a convertible note today, 5% interest, 20% discount rate. TriFusion's launching. We'd love for you to join us.
My wife Lauren, she's a nurse. She's worked with dozens of patients who had an amputation or missing limb. Out of all of those patients, only 2 were able to afford a prosthetic device. The rest of them, they can't afford that. And this is important because globally, every 30 seconds, a person just like you and me loses a limb. In the time we've given this pitch, 30 people will be in need of a prosthetic device. They're ready for our technology, they're ready for their financial freedom, and together we can launch TriFusion and mobilize them. Thank you.
Our major claim is higher durability. Do you have stress test data where you compared it to a standard device?
Yeah, so our standard testing, we print the dog bone in the Z direction, we do a tensile test on it, and that's where we get our numbers for strength and toughness. So we have a lot of data, and if you want to talk data, come see me. What's that?
Data with the real prosthetic.
We have not yet tested against real prosthetic in a fatigue setup. That's next. That happens through the CFI and through the Baylor College of Medicine. Thank you for asking. We have analyzed these materials are the ones that are currently used, and our safety factors exceed, well, our safety factors are twice that of today's 45 carbon fiber weave because of the way it's oriented. Thank you.
Next.
You say you microwave the material to set it? I'm over here. You microwave it to set it. Is it a thermal setting process? And at what temperature ambiently does the strength deteriorate?
Yeah, so I can take that question. The materials we use are thermoplastic resin, so the baseline polymer is different than what they're using today. They use thermoset epoxies, and ours is actually reformable. So the heat treatment process itself, it just causes polymer diffusion, it welds that together, and that's what increases the strength.
Do you know at what temperature the strength, how does the strength respond to changes in temperature?
How does the strength respond to changes in temperature?
We need 150 Celsius to get polymer chain diffusion. So in a normal operating band that a person would see with their device, we don't risk any device resetting. Is that in what you're asking?
But materials sit, and they sit in places they get hot.
Yes, sir.
And so, I assume once it's exposed, you lose the strength.
No, it's a polymer diffusion process, so the chains commingle between the layers, and that's what causes the strength to increase.
I don't know.
We have a lot of material science on this front, so I'd love to talk to you about that.
Thermoplastics as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah.
What,
Yes, sir.
I saw, you said you filed a patent, I didn't get it, has the patent been granted yet?
The patent has not yet issued. It was examined by the European office. There is a search report. The search report was published on September 25th, 2015.
What do your lawyers think is the biggest risk or likelihood of the patent getting awarded?
The lawyers, there was one concern on a materials claim from a German company, but in the words of the people who examined the search report, they said, I've seen patents with much stricter and more harsh search results be issued. So it goes to the national stage. The national stage will come back in a few months, actually, at which point we'll have an opportunity to amend claims if necessary.
And what do you think are your biggest risks to really proving the technology out in the real world?
I think the fatigue cycles is definitely a question the gentleman raised up here. I mean, we need to put this socket not just on Jim's leg and get Jim to walk on it and get Jim to try to break it. We need to get several sockets, like 50 devices or so, into fatigue testing machines that are specially designed just to test prosthetic sockets. So that's our risk. Yes, sir.
So what are the knee and ankle joints made from?
Today's knee and ankle joints are fairly modular components. This is why we're going to work with prosthetists right out of the gate. And so the prosthetists that we've spoken with, they said, we know 3D printing is going to disrupt our business. We're just not sure how. And so now that we can solve the strength issue, we can start to make sockets, which is our first step. And then later on, for next generation prosthetic devices, we can start to integrate more and more componentry into the print itself.
So it can be notably difficult to get healthcare professionals to shift their model if you're mucking with their revenue model, their tradition, and their art. What kind of barriers do you potentially see in prosthetist adoption?
The barriers to adoption on the prosthetist side are slim to none. Most of the hard labor is done by technicians in the back, and that the prosthetists have to do most of the time-consuming labor, which I have a great slide to show you for that. But because their reimbursement is continuing to decline, and it's probably going to keep doing that given the way our healthcare system is moving, our cost reduction versus their cost of making it in-house enables them to achieve a much higher margin than they can today. They have every incentive to opt for this in terms of revenue and profit.
They can move away from solvents, they can move away from cross-setting polymers that are cross-linked like epoxies, they can move away from having to do machining processes on carbon fiber fabrics. The motivation is there to make a switch. And going from a 12-step process to a 3-step process, it's a big cost save for them.
yeah, up here.
So you mentioned the licensing opportunity. How deeply have you investigated that in other verticals, and what kind of value propositions do you see?
Thank you for asking that. So, I love football. I absolutely love it. But if I had my son, I'm not sure I'd let him play. So, if J.J. Watt's out there on the field and he lays a hit on somebody, then we want to design a crumple zone into a shell that goes inside of the helmet so that helmet crushes. Just like a car that hits a wall today, the crumple zone crushes the people walk away because that absorbs all the energy. Same thing we see for football helmets. That's just one idea, it's one example. We haven't been approached by anybody yet to talk about licensing, but we're certainly open to that.
But we know some football people.
We do know some football people, yeah. Chad Hennings, I did flip this idea by Chad Hennings, actually, and he said he was pretty interested in it, so thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to know about the FDA. What kind of testing does the FDA require for this? And specifically, I believe this is considered a medical device.
Yes, sir.
So the FDA considers this a Class 1 medical device. There is a predicate device on the market right now that is 510K exempt that we comply with perfectly. So in terms of pre-market notification, we don't have to do it. All we have to do is maintain contact with the FDA, letting them know, hey, we're using safe materials, our products have serial numbers so we can figure out when they fail. Other than that, it's not a lot of market restrictions. And because we're pursuing VAs specifically at first, which VAs are exempt from 99% of FDA oversight, it's awesome. We have extremely strong purchasing power. We can sell a device to the VA today, and they can put it on a patient and generate revenue from it.
Are there any material issues with the skin and allergies and things like that?
So because our device won't actually come in contact with the skin, there's a sock between the device and the skin that eliminates a lot of those risks. But also, as long as we don't label it as sterile, is the only requirement in terms of GMP. The most risk-seeming material in there is the carbon nanotubes, the CNTs, and those are already used to deliver drugs internally. They're used in medical implants. They've been authorized over dozens of Class 3 devices. So for this use, it's a non-risk.
Thank you.
Yeah, question up here.
For you to ultimately go to market, you have to be, are you a materials company? You actually have to have control over printing technology and all the robotics handling mechanisms. How much of the value chain do you need to own for this to be a viable product in the market?
The 3D printing market today is roughly segmented into 3 segments: materials, machines, and devices. So we're working with a partner company that's working in the materials and machine space, and we're closely coupled in order to closely iterate on the design cycle time. That lowers our risk, and it helps develop the devices very quickly. We do not need to own the materials. We supply specifications, and they're working on making the materials in broad scales that have the coating on them. So it lowers our capital risk, lowers our capital cost. It makes us very capital efficient to work with this partner company.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Sorry. Compared with human bones? We haven't analyzed human bones, but we've analyzed today's materials that are used in today's existing prosthetic devices. And so we would imagine that the 45-45 carbon weave has been, adopted widely throughout the entire O&P industry.
You can come down here and play with this.
Yeah.
It's very stiff. It has carbon fiber in it. Oh, yeah. So we have the ability to print the flexible materials too. Yeah.
So let me repeat the question real quick, just so everyone can hear. The concern is that our devices are too strong. That our devices are stronger than human bone, and if we put a really strong socket on somebody and they fall and break, then we're going to break some bone somewhere else. In essence, is the question, right? So, with geometry control, we can control the stiffness of our actual final device. The second main advantage to our approach in 3D printing over our competitors is we can integrate soft materials, elastomerics, TPUs, thermoplastic urethanes, in the print at the same time as we do structural polymers. Our structural polymers are carbon fiber infused nylons, very, very strong. But we can vary that wall thickness because of the flexibility of 3D printing, however we need to adapt the device to a wide range of human body sizes, types, weights, and activity levels.
All right,
Sorry, we got hurt.
I'm sorry, we're out of time.
Thanks. Okay, let's talk.